So there's a very good chance that the very first viral tweet that you saw about the movie Sinners was one perhaps calling you out for thinking that Annie was Smoke's mother and not his lover. Maybe you weren't guilty of that, but that tweet did rightfully point out that there was a portion of the audience that saw actress Wumi Musaku and superimposed this narrative on her simply because she's a dark-skinned, voluptuous black woman. Objectively speaking, and if you have eyes, you can look at Ms. Mosaku and notice that she is an objectively stunning, not matronly, older mammy type. She doesn't fit that stereotype in the least. But people have brains that have been influenced by American media and over a century of image making of dark-skinned black women. And they have been trained to see them in a very specific way. Sinners cost about $60 million to make, and there are a lot of people who, when they talk about forms of resistance in times like these, they kind of downplay the value of art and cinema. Because black people meticulously planning, framing, and shooting images of themselves for themselves is an act of resistance in itself. This might seem like a fluffy way to do that, but media and image making is central in forming an identity. Identity formation is the groundwork for how you form a political identity or a political agenda that serves you in your community. And to form a political opinion of yourself and your people, you have to have an accurate view of yourself. There's a reason why white men burned down Ida B. Wells' printing press that she owned, because what she was doing was going down to the South herself and getting the stories about real human black people who were not monsters. She was undermining the justifications used for their brutal murders. She directly challenged a story about group justice and community policing and showed that there was actually a rash of terrorism that was a backlash to black people gaining any kind of autonomy. Putting dark-skinned black women in the corners of society, it has a sneaky political agenda to it. When you regulate them to mother figures, docile creatures that want to serve, or people that are just not desirable and not your preference, you can do a lot of things to them and you can obscure a truth. The truth that these women have always been highly desirable by all kinds of men, and especially men that had political power, to sexually harass and abuse them en masse. By creating the mammy, you could downplay the sexual violence that was happening. You could make the men that wanted to marry them and bring them into society as regular women be considered deviant and rejected by society. And then, better, you can override the wholeness and the softness of their humanity and femininity. And when an entire group of people is routinely denied the ability to tell their own story, to create media about themselves, to read, write, speak in a way that reflects who they actually are, a lie can go unchallenged for a very long time. But today, in 2025, Ryan Coogler is in charge of his film. He has a team that can do his bidding, and he can fearlessly shoot what we've always known. And that matters because Ryan is adding to the American canon of images of black women, especially dark-skinned black women. Images that overrepresent a kind of dark-skinned black woman that really didn't exist, that it was a figment of white imagination. If you go online and you look at the Jim Crow Museum's collection of various goods that they found over the years, you'll find something peculiar. In the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even up to the 80s, people were collecting, creating, and making these household objects that represented dark-skinned black women. When these people could not own them, when they could not own us, they fashioned objects that could still serve them and make them feel good and reminded them of another time. Look at this ashtray. Black women were bottle openers, they were stirrers, they were ashtrays, they had fishing lures. White people had less and less control over, total control, I should say, over black bodies. But guess what? They held on to that image and they still had control over cinema. The people you know and work with and live around have parents and they have grandparents and they have great-grandparents. You don't even have to go back that far, who have sometimes the only conception they have of black people, the largest conception they have of black people, comes from stuff like this. And you would think that maybe the 70s or the 80s, the videos and the movies about black women, and especially dark-skinned black women, would look a little different from this. No, they don't. They didn't. We have blaxploitation films. We have this whole thing with video girls having to look a certain way, having to have a certain lightness, all that sort of nonsense. We have had only a mere 20 years for that image to start to crack on any kind of mainstream level. Let us think about how Annie is presented in this film. She's a hoodoo priestess. She's a successful businesswoman. She's somebody that is respected and deeply desired. She's immediately clocked as stunning, striking, and whoa. She is a spiritual anchor for this community too, right? She's not somebody who is just running around frazzled, tired, hair in a mess cooking. She leads in rescue missions. She's depicted as a soft, loving mother to a small child and a lover of a man her age from her community. And look at the flowers, look at the different framing of her face and her body was very respectful and also very much in awe of her. And I should add, when we notice that she's striking and desirable, it is not depicted in a Jezebel way. It is depicted as part of her natural essence and beauty. She connects with a man who loves her, likes her, and would die for her. This is a Black love story that doesn't flatten who she is. And quite critically, she is not set up against the white-looking, white-passing, mostly white Mary. Her femininity is not pit against each other either. She is not the butt of stupid jokes about preferences. I'd like to add, it's Annie who is the one who decides and says that Mary belongs to them, not the other way around. And I know you all have seen that one podcast where they keep going viral because these men come on here and they talk about how their light skin preferences and how they feel about their dark skinned wives and how that preference is not racist and it's actually politically and socially neutral. It's not. That preference is not natural. It's not neutral. It's a social hierarchy that has to be taught, that has to be socialized into you, and you can actually see that it is blinding you to the natural, fabulous beauty of so many people around you if you dare to question it, but most people don't. It matters that Annie is depicted as somebody who has desires and that she does not exist to fulfill the desires of other people. Mammies don't want anything because they're mythically too busy serving and figuring out how to help other people. That's just in their genes, it's in their DNA. For so long, American cinema has needed Black women, dark-skinned Black women, to soothe particular fears that they have about them. The fear that Black women are too sexual, they're too aggressive, they're coming after their men, they're Jezebels, they don't want to serve, all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that every single thing we do has to be an act of resistance. I'm not saying that Ryan Coogler needs to spend all his artistic passion and time just doing things for a cause that meets somebody else's expectations of like a civil rights movement, right? But just inherently, just him doing what he is doing is incredible. And I want you to appreciate what he's doing. I want you to understand what that means in context of everything that's happened before us. It is unbelievably powerful to use cinema to create images about something that has always been true, but that is not widespread, it is not known, it is not part of the American historical cultural memory. The first violence of white supremacy is, of course, to the body, but the second one is to the mind. Filmmaking is inherently subjective because when you just move the camera lens, you've made a choice. When you focus the gaze, when you decide what gaze are you going to use, that is also a choice. When Black women come on this app or any other app, especially dark-skinned Black women who have been regulated over and over and over again to the margins of everything, that is a power that was not available to us before. The carousels, the makeup videos, even the everyday normal things where you are showing up as yourself doing something, you are adding thousands of more images to a canon of images that previously did not have that. You are counteracting a century more of images that were designed to control us and to control our perception of ourselves and other people's perception of us. Because you could even see there's a lot of 19th century art that was supposed to be about abolition and making people free that was clearly made by white people for white people. And even the way they depicted Black people was as if Black people desperately needed white people and that they were just so, they just didn't have any agency. They were just pathetic, pitiful people. And again, like I said, even though the intent was right, the heart was there, they didn't have it. It wasn't by us. It wasn't by people who saw and really grasped the wholeness of Black people. I hope to see Wunmi Mosaku be appreciated for the artist she is and also be cast in whatever the heck she wants to be cast in. May she win everything.